They are attempting to usurp Article 1 of the Constitution and to steal legislative authority from Congress. This is evident both in their unconstitutional and unlawful spending freeze that has already been stopped by 2 courts, district courts, count them. No, they're clearly planning and edging towards a completely gutting. And Trump is very obvious about it, saying we're getting rid of the Department of Education. Is that, how much more clear could he be?
They said dismantling.
Oh my God.
Take the boat out onto the lake on a family trip. I'm really worried because Dad said he was gonna actually just sink the boat. No. He didn't say sink the boat. He said dismantle the boat, honey. Dismantling the boat may not sink it, okay? It might just make it to where it sinks very soon. So this is a debate that I watched recently. I'm not gonna watch the whole thing. It's 2.5 hours. Yikes. It's a really good debate. I recommend you go watch the whole thing if you're curious about this particular topic, or if you like any of the debaters in here. But I'm a big fan of Pisco, my man in the middle right here. He is a lawyer. Don't know like his background, like what school or schools he went to. I don't know like if he is licensed in any particular state. I'm not familiar with all those particulars, but he's got a pretty extensive knowledge of the law, and as it sounds like, especially as it pertains to like the Constitution. And what they get into here is related to the president's control over federal funds, over congressionally appropriated funds, right? They let's mute it and just play it up to the point that I want to start at here. This is basically a debate about the president's control of the purse, which of course he doesn't have control of the purse. That's a word that's commonly used, is the power of the purse, but that's pretty much pretty much a sole privilege and responsibility of Congress, right? Of the House and the Senate. They have control of the purse for a reason, because the broad sort of image of what the electorate looks like in the United States is pretty well represented by the Congress and the Senate in a lot of ways. We swung back to the right a little bit in 2024 as a country. That's generally, the Congress barely has, they have the slimmest majority in pretty much history, I think. And then, the Senate only has a 3-seat majority, which is pretty decisive. When you need a simple majority to pass a lot of different things, to confirm cabinet picks, to pass reconciliation bills and whatnot in the Senate, a simple majority is all you need. It seems that the Republicans are going to be able to get some things done in the first little bit. But the power of directing money, freezing money, cutting off money, cutting anything, supplementing anything, adding money, anytime government money is being directed in any capacity, that is pretty much a power of Congress. And that's what is outlined in the Impoundment Act, which we'll dive into. But I just wanted to let Pisco make his opening statement here. His primary debate opponent in this is Lactoid here, who I think does some mental gymnastics to justify his position on this. But we'll get into this now. Let's start with Pisco's opening statement.
Pisco, open us up. Give us your thoughts. Why is this a constitutional crisis? Go ahead.
Yeah, it's clearly a constitutional crisis. Donald Trump is a disgrace to his office, and he is implementing a Project 2025 agenda specifically to centralize power to create authoritarian government. When I use the term constitutional crisis, I'm talking about any kind of significant and existential threat to the structure of the Constitution. We're not just talking about violations of a particular amendment. We're not just talking about, whether free speech was violated in a given instance. We're talking about the authorities of the government itself, the foundation of the different branches of government, which is the foundation of our society and what binds us together. That's what we mean by constitutional crisis. Okay, so what we're talking about is a more systemic, structural problem that has been introduced maliciously by this government and the deniable private actors that it employs to try to essentially centralize power. So what's the crisis? All right. Number one, steal legislative authority from Congress. This is evident both in their unconstitutional and unlawful spending freeze that has already been stopped by 2 courts, district courts, count them, who have acknowledged that this is, very clearly trying to usurp the exclusive authority of the Congress to spend the money. And Article 1 clearly sets out that it's Congress who gets to decide what to spend the money. You can make some flippant comparison to a temporary pause, limited in scope, limited in time, one other instance in the history of this country. It is not at all dealing with the broader systemic attack on Congress's ability to appropriate funds. And let's think about it. Imagine if it were the case that Congress's statutes were just advisory, were just opinions, and optional for the president to implement. Absolute bullshit and garbage. And these motherfuckers are going to defend it and say that's not a constitutional crisis. It's a constitutional crisis when we talk about adding Supreme Court members to the bench, but it's not a constitutional crisis to just ignore the appropriations of Congress. Number 2, DOJ. DOJ just purporting to eliminate statutorily enacted agencies of Congress. Eliminate, for example, what they're planning to do, the Department of Education. Eliminate USAID, statutorily passed. So now what we're talking about here and what they're going to defend is that it's not a constitutional crisis for the president or his minions or his deniable oligarch friends to just delete an agency or to do the effective deletion in the case of just stripping them of all their funding, stripping them of everything. That is disgusting that they would defend that. And then finally, what we're gearing up to next, which is the attack on the judicial system, the real attack on the Supreme Court, where J.D. Vance, the authors of Project 2025, have all told us that they want to bring to heel the judicial department of the United States of America. They're already starting by this little rescinding of the memo that you saw, the spending freeze. Well, we rescind the memo, but not the policy. The district court judge in D.C. called them out, said it was one of the most disingenuous things she's ever seen to try to escape judicial review in that context. And what they're gearing up for, what J.D. Vance said, what these people said is, let Marshall enforce his rule. He's made his ruling, now let him enforce it, hearkening back to this apocryphal statement from Andrew Jackson. That's obviously what they're gearing up for. It's so serious, in fact, that the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, someone who I disagree with vehemently on, had to come out publicly and make a statement directly, not directly, but everyone knows, addressing J.D. Vance and these kinds of disgusting robber barons. He came out and said, it's very concerning that people are talking about ignoring the courts, and they're going to defend it. And they're going to tell you, hey, it's no big deal. We don't give a shit about it. It's not a crisis at all. They're completely washed. They're completely cooked. They have no idea what's going on in this country. Your freedoms and the structure of the country is being attacked.
Okay. Well, thanks.
Okay. So it sounds like Pisco went on a little longer there than they had anticipated. Yeah, he went on about 4 minutes or so, it looks like, but he's very passionate about this topic, as you'll see. So just I don't want to I'm gonna let Lactoid make his opening statement here because it's stupid and I have some thoughts about it. But Soy Pill here is the only one other than Wick. These two are the only two that I believe don't have any sort of legal background into these topics. Zetsu, I think, is this guy's name here. He has a legal background. He references he references a couple of different cases that address the Impoundment Act, apparently, which I have pulled up in tabs. I have not read all the way through those, guys, so we're gonna kind of be learning together what is discussed in those findings based on what he talks about here. But we're gonna let Lactoid here make his opening statement, which starts at, I wrote down the timestamp, about 8:16. We'll go to 8:18. That should work.
Hear me okay?
You're fine. Yeah.
So there's a Twitter user. His name is ZeroFux, F-U-X, and he put out it was like a who said it? Was it Hitler or was it Pisco? And a couple of the ones are actually pretty difficult to differentiate, because what Pisco does is he uses incredibly hyperbolic language, us versus them categorization, and a sort of mindset of they are evil, we need to defeat them, no alliances, nothing we can do, we're in a total crisis, we're dunzos, holy shit, this is awful, we have to go to war. This is exactly the same kind of rhetoric that he criticized Trump using, right? Where you say fight like hell, you say, fight them, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, very much like Trump, hey, I don't mean this violently, but still, it is incredibly divisive. It is incredibly aggressive language, and it's also alarmist, I guess, in this regard. We're not in a constitutional crisis right now. I think that's kind of a ridiculous statement. I actually agree with the definition that there is a significant quote. Here's a constitutional crisis is a significant and existential threat to the Constitution, not just a violation or a violation that has yet to be examined by the Supreme Court, which is its job, but a threat to the very structure. I think it's hilarious that people who want to add justices to the Supreme Court now care all of a sudden about constitutional crises. Notice how they've sort of dropped that language now that Trump won. But everything that Pisco went through legally, there is answers for all of it, right? DOJ is made up of special government employees, which is allowed. They are allowed to do the things they are doing. When we're talking about destroying agencies, it depends how you do it. I agree that you can't just unilaterally remove an agency, but there is abilities to, have agencies work with other agencies for certain agencies to divert funding from one agency to another agency in order to get certain XYZ thing done. There's plenty of legal tools that you can use, that the president can use without threatening the separation of powers, without going against what Congress has the power to do. And one of those is simply delay things, which XYZ here, funding freeze. It is a delay, especially when it comes to U.S. aid. So there's legal examples for everything that was just mentioned. A lot of it is just alarmist and really fomenting hate, I think, against otherwise good people. Oh, and one last thing. Of course, we should be cutting government waste. Of course, this is a good thing. I think DOJ has done incredible steps. And in fact, I think a lot of the motivation for the anger here is because of how effective they've been on identifying government waste and other horrible things that the government's been getting away with for a very long time.
Okay. Well, we have some strong stances. Let's get in.
Okay. So he does this, and I get Pisco did reference his name in his opening statement, so that's probably why he felt like basically opening with an ad hom on Pisco, talking about this. Did Hitler say it or did Pisco say it? Because Pisco uses incredibly hyperbolic language. Okay, just to say something. This was uploaded to YouTube 8 days ago. So that would have been last Saturday. And I think that would have meant that the debate would have occurred maybe earlier in the day Saturday, maybe sometime Saturday, like afternoon, or maybe even Friday. I don't know when Wick usually hosts his debates. I would assume it's Friday night, but I'm not sure. So he mentions, did Hitler say it or did Pisco say it? Because Pisco uses hyperbolic language. So when Pisco is a very passionate guy, right? So when he talks about these disgusting, vile, incel freaks that are running rampant through. I mean, think of who he's describing. Think of who he's talking about. He's talking about people who fit those descriptions one way or another based on their actions. Whereas when Hitler was using his language, who was he describing? He was just describing like Jews and black people and anybody who was not, a part of, anybody who wasn't like what is the term? What am I looking for? Anybody who wasn't like sympathetic to the goals of the Third Reich and whatnot. That's who Hitler probably would have described. So Hitler would have described innocent people as those things, whereas Pisco's describing people who are not exactly innocent of doing some of the things that Mustache Man would have done. So it's like when he says, did Pisco say it or did Hitler say it? It's a cheap jab, but it makes no fucking sense in the broad spectrum of things. It's really stupid, and it's a cheap ad hom. He uses the fact that Pisco mentioned his name because Pisco called it for what he would be. He would be defending this garbage because he obviously is going to. He's a MAGA centric lawyer. whatever lactoid guy is. So of course Pisco knows exactly what he's gonna say in terms of, or vaguely he's gonna know what he's gonna defend, maybe even to a degree how he's gonna defend it. But then, you know, this lactoid breaks out this weird ad hom with the Hitler thing. It's really stupid. It's pointless. Pisco's not trying to become the leader of our nation. You know, he's talking about people who are committing acts that violate law, so on and so forth. He's not some leader of a country talking about the Jews or whatever, right? Like, so absurd for him to share any comparison with Pisco like that means something. It's really fucking stupid. But they pretty much jump into the debate here, so let's watch this for a little bit.
The floor is open. If you have trouble getting in, a word edgewise, just raise your hand or DM me. Or
yeah, the debate is not whether or not Pisco is a hypocrite. The debate is not whether or not Pisco is inflammatory. The debate is not whether Pisco supports this or that. The debate is about whether there's a constitutional crisis. And first of all, I think we should dispense with Zetsu's standard. And I think Lactoid, you disagree with Zetsu's standard, which is there needs to be a civil type war situation for it to be a constitutional crisis.
I don't know his standard.
Right? We agree that's
his standard.
Well, what was your standard, actually?
Real quick. That was not his standard. And the reason why I identified how hyperbolic you are is because I knew that you would try to pull this shit, because you've been nothing but hyperbolic the past couple of weeks. This shit, you're saying, he's saying, here's an example of a constitutional crisis.
Is the debate about me?
He's not saying there's the only. Hold on.
Okay, so what's your standard?
You came at us firstly. Secondly, he's not saying this is the only example of a constitutional crisis, which is a civil war. He's saying that is a example.
Well, no. He said it would have to be
something like. I was assuming something that, like, I'm using an extreme example that we can all understand.
Let's be clear, right? So if the president
standards as a threshold,
if the president and if Elon Musk, and let's ask this both of Zetsu and of Lactoid, if they just purported to delete an agency enacted by Congress, would you say that it's a constitutional crisis? If they started doing at least two.
If they straight up try and delete it without anything, if they do something else that somehow hinders it, then no. But if they actually just say it doesn't exist anymore, you're all fired, that like I've gotten rid of the department, then yes, I guess I would say
that's a constitutional crisis.
And he hasn't done that.
But I'm saying he hasn't done that.
But Lacto, you'd agree with that?
Pisco, let me ask you, hold on real quick. Pisco,
can do
Pisco, do you think that Trump has done that?
Elon Musk has purported to delete and saying he's going to delete USAID, and they're planning to delete the Department of Education.
USAID gone right now.
Yeah, so USAID is still an entity right now, but they're planning to do it. They're saying they're going to do it. Correct? Yes or no, Lactoid?
You can do it.
Lactoid,
but not just on their own.
Are they saying they're going to do it? Yes or no?
What they're saying
yes
is
or
that
no?
They're going to.
Yes or no?
Hold on. When we're talking about like removing an agency,
yes,
there's like different ways you can interpret that. Yes, there's different ways you can interpret that. If we're talking about gutting an agency by using the tools available to the executive, which is managing this agency and appoints employees to this agency, including special government employees, yeah, that's totally fine.
At this so you're actually saying that it's possible that the president could have the authority to just ignore and completely gut an agency, is what you're saying.
Sir, if we're talking about deleting...
just real quick, Lactoid, we're going to need one at a time. I know there's a lot of passion here, right? But in interest of the viewers and the audience, and I feel it would be in their best interest to get a full, educated account of what's going on. Try not to yell over each other too much this time, right?
That's not what we should be here for. Sorry, Wick.
Thank you, Wick. I appreciate that. No, I think that it depends what you're talking about here. If they're saying, yeah, we're going to dismantle this by using what we can do as the executive of going in, cutting waste, cutting inefficiencies, which absolutely the president has the ability to do.
They said
the president also has the ability to delay things. Hold on. If that's what they mean by that, then that's totally fine. If they're going to
delete means
hold on. Hey, we just got done talking to you. Give me a second. If we're going to be talking about completely unilaterally deleting an entire agency, I would agree. But the question is, has Trump put us into a constitutional crisis? Not, is it possible that at some point in the future, Trump might
we're
put us
deep in a constitutional crisis. So basically, what Lactoid is saying. So what Lactoid is saying. Wait. So I'm responding now. So what Lactoid is saying is, not until we're at the final stage. This is kind of like, if you guys remember Actual Justice Warrior. He's like, not until we're at the stage in which there's a full-on dictatorship and a king will Lactoid come and Johnny Come Lately say, okay, I guess it was a constitutional crisis. No, they're clearly planning and edging towards a completely gutting, and Trump is very obvious about it, saying we're getting rid of the Department of Education. Is that, how much more clear could he be?
They said dismantling.
My God!
I think there's absolutely
that. Wow, what a stretch in semanticism there. Is that even a term? Semantics maybe is semantic. Is semanticism a thing? Semantics. No, yeah, it's semantics. Okay, what a stretch in semantics there to be like, oh, no. They didn't say that they're deleting the agency. They just said dismantling the agency. Just, guys, it's okay. He's just dismantling it. Just like how, you know, if you're going to go, you know, let's say family trip, you're gonna go take the boat out onto the lake on a family trip, right? And you know, it's just like, okay, guys, I'm really worried because Dad said he was gonna actually just sink the boat. No. He didn't say sink the boat. He said dismantle the boat, honey. Dismantling the boat may not sink it. Okay, it might just make it to where it sinks very soon. You know, I don't know, man. Like, so he said dismantle, not delete. Okay, fine. Like, I'll grant you that. What's next?
Ways to do that.
Hold on.
Can you clarify, Lactoid? Like, if someone comes in, appoints a non-government person into this like facility and says, "Hey, you have free reign to freeze federal funding to overturn something that Congress has done that is going beyond what an executive order is allowed to do," at what point are you now like, "Oh, it's a crisis"? When it's done? When they say they're going to do it? When it's like 50% done? Like, that's just what Pisco's getting at. Like, you're just saying, well, they haven't actually done the thing they're going to say 100% to completion, and therefore it's not a deletion. Like, what's the standard then? It's only when it's done.
So this is a misunderstanding, and I'm sure part of it is the misunderstanding is influenced by Pisco's hyperbolic language here. When we're talking about, yeah, I would say that doing the thing that you're saying would be unconstitutional. If he does that, then yeah, you could argue that at that point that'd be a constitutional crisis. But everything right now that's been done
federal funding is that
he has the right to do that.
Is that illegal?
He has the right to fund.
The court has said that he has to stop that.
Yes, he does. Hold on.
What right?
Doge specifically are special government employees. The president has the authority to appoint. They are members of the Treasury.
No, to freeze all funding.
Court decision today, or it was either today or yesterday, came out and said that Doge does have the right to access this information. And the president
freeze all funding.
Elon is the employee. Elon is an employee.
Freeze all funding. You just heard him. He said freeze all funding.
We're getting there. Trump is Elon Musk is in this case a special government, or Doge at least is a special government employees. They're made up of special government employees of the Treasury, and they report to Donald Trump, who is the elected president.
Freeze all funding
and Congress. And yes, you have the right. The president has the right, in order to avoid inefficiencies, to freeze funding, to delay funding. Now,
indefinitely, right? Wait. I just want to hear. Indefinitely? Lactoid. Indefinitely?
Yeah.
Until the end of the fiscal year.
Indefinitely?
No, I just said until the end of. Do you not hear my answer?
Do you agree that they pause indefinitely?
No, they don't say it's paused infinitely.
Wait. Do you forever? Do you?
So, in case you couldn't quite hear Zetsu here, he says no. They said it's not infinitely. So, these guys get kind of hung up on this for a minute, on what Pisco's definition is what his definition is of indefinitely. So I've pulled it up, everybody. So here's the definition of indefinite. It can be seen as vague or not precise. Just simply not definite, right? Having no exact limits. So what Pisco is saying is that the verbiage of the law that they're about to dive into, which is the Impoundment Control Act of 1974, what Pisco is saying is that law doesn't grant the president power to impound congressionally appropriated funds indefinitely. As in, when he does that, they have to set a date in which the funds will be released, where they will not be, what's the other term that they impounded is also, I think they say rescinded. We're going to get into that. I read up a little bit on this earlier, just not a crazy amount, but they get hung up on this definition of indefinite for a little bit, just so you guys know.
You agree, yes or no, that they pause the funding indefinitely?
No, they did not say it's infinitely forever.
Did they define
when it ended? They pause it.
So again, Pisco's reiterating what definition he's referring to. Zetsu doesn't. This kid's clueless. I feel like this kid's probably like a law student. Like he's maybe in like his second semester or some shit, and he's like, I'm a lawyer boy now. I know what I'm doing, and he's really not got a real grasp of it yet. Whereas Pisco, I don't know this for a fact, but Pisco strikes me as someone who's been through law school, has had some sort of experience outside of that. You know, to where he can cut through some of the BS that Zetsu here still seems to get hung up on. And
until they have to not pause.
Well, yeah, wait, is that indefinite? Wait, is that indefinite or is that definite?
Are you trying to take advantage of people's
stop.
lack
Answer
of
the
knowledge
fucking
between
question.
indefinite
Answer
and
the fucking question.
infinitely?
Is that an indefinite or is
Lactoid just asked if basically I think Lactoid is having trouble understanding what it means. I think Lactoid here is thinking indefinite is meaning what Zetsu thinks is Pisco saying, which is infinite. These two are just they're not even with it, bro. They're not even fucking with it.
Is it a definite end to the pause? You just said he could not pause it indefinitely. I'm asking you. I'm asking you a very simple question, and everyone sees you're dodging it. Is it an indefinite pause or is it definite?
It's perfectly acceptable.
Is it definite or indefinite? Is it definite or indefinite?
Can I answer the question that I'm cutting me off?
Okay, gang, I thought this was like, okay, I only got 4 people on. They're usually pretty good. They're usually pretty, this is going to be a calm conversation. I was wrong. Okay.
Stakes are high, Wick. It's our country being eroded. Sorry.
I just want, real quick. But I do want you to, Lactoid, I do want you to answer Pisco's question. Is it indefinitely or is it definitely that it was paused?
Well, so it can't, like, legally it can't be indefinitely in terms of
Did they purport to pause it indefinitely or not? Answer the question.
Can you stop? Can you stop for a second? If we're talking about like forever, no, it can't be paused forever.
Did they purport to pause it indefinitely?
I can see you. I can see you coming at it. They can't pause it forever, okay?
Did they?
He could say, I don't know. If he did, that's fine as long as he stops
as long as you're cooked, and he won't answer the question.
Pisco. Let me answer, please, without you jumping in.
You're not answering the question.
I am. I said I don't know if he specifically put in the order.
You don't know? You didn't read the fucking pause? Are you that stupid?
Stop. Okay, Wick, you have to take control of this maniac for a second. Jesus Christ. Okay, listen to me. I don't know if in the order they specified that specific word definitely or indefinitely, they said a specific date or not. But the reality is you can, it's perfectly fine to say, hey, we are freezing this for whatever period of time. As long as they unfreeze it by any kind of required time period, this is not violating separation of powers. This isn't violating the constitutional authority granted to the president, regardless of what he says.
You have to answer the question. The question is the answer you don't know whether they pause it indefinitely or definitely?
That's what I asked.
Okay, so if your answer is you don't, so is the answer? If the answer
indefinite is not in there.
Wait, just to be clear.
The word indefinite is not in there.
Oh my God!
Wait! Did you just lie to all of us?
He knows he's cooked.
Did you just lie to all? Hold on. Wait, hold on.
Oh my God!
Can someone link me? This order so I can just...
He's not claiming it says the word indefinite.
I'm not claiming it says the word indefinite.
It doesn't give a specific ending point.
Correct.
That's why I say colloquially, no, it's not indefinite.
Does he have to specify a specific endpoint?
So
I'm reasonable to believe that it's infinite.
He's not going to let me say this point. So Lactoid just told you he does not know whether or not it's indefinite or a definite end on pause. But he told you before that it would be totally unacceptable to have an indefinite pause on funding. That would constitute a constitutional crisis. Ipso facto, his position needs to be, I don't know if there's a constitutional crisis, because
I think this is good. I think Pisco broke this down so well here. So yes, he did say earlier, no, we are not in a constitutional crisis right now. And I think they do get in later in this debate. Again, you should watch this whole debate. It's a good debate. Later into this debate, they get into the whole whether or not so that it's about impoundment. I had it. I lost it. But what did he say? Because he just said that it would be oh yeah, they get into the whole what defines a constitutional crisis here later. Maybe we get to hear a little bit of that. If not, again, you should go watch this whole debate. It's great. But the definition of a constitutional crisis that I think they end up agreeing on at some point is that there has to be, it's a point where there's no way that's written into the Constitution on how to resolve whatever the situation may be. And we are rapidly approaching that. If the Trump administration continues to either impound these funds beyond the legally defined parameters that are laid out either in the Impoundment Act or in the cases that follow the Impoundment Act that may have narrowed its definition. We'll dive into those here in a minute. I just want to wait for them to bring up impoundment before I go into all those documents, because we'll just be kind of scrounging through documents for a minute, and I want to kind of let these guys play it out. But this guy's rubbing his eyes as if he's fucking frustrated, but Pisco caught him here. Pisco caught him good. He said, and I'm referencing what Lactoid said here vaguely, is that we're not in a constitutional crisis yet. I'll give him that benefit of the doubt that I believe he said yet, to where he's not saying outright that there won't be a constitutional crisis or that there can't be a constitutional crisis. But because what Pisco just demonstrated here, because he doesn't know whether or not the impoundment or the freezing or the remission of these funds or whatever, because he doesn't know if the time frame is definite or indefinite, he ipso facto, is what Pisco said, he has to also say and believe that we don't know if we're in a constitutional crisis. And that's if you take Lactoid, if you give him the benefit of the doubt, and he's arguing in good faith here. So
you don't know if it's definite or indefinite. That's just logic, bro.
No. This is insane. Zetsui just said the word indefinite is not used. So I apologize.
The only way to have an indefinite, like,
because we're using
what kind of argument is that?
If it
wasn't an argument. It's not an argument. It was a statement.
Yeah. So we're talking
again. Pardon me. We just looked at the definition of indefinite, and it just simply means that no specified time or vague. That is the definition Pisco is using. It should be the agreed upon definition, but because these two guys are fucking idiots, they're thinking that indefinite means that it either has to be stated explicitly, Trump is holding these monies, these funds indefinitely. They think he has to either literally say it, or that they have to say, we're holding this forever, we're not gonna ever give this money back, it's our money now, whatever. These guys are just, I think they're using this very weirdly narrow definition. I think Zetsu here maybe says it correctly, where he says the colloquial indefinite. Colloquial indefinite, yeah, sometimes indefinitely can be referring to in perpetuity or forever. But again, that's like a colloquial definition. That's like millennials, how millennials ruined the definition of the word literally, right? We say literally when we mean things that are not at all literal, or when we mean figuratively. So it's kind of like that. There's a colloquial definition, and then there's a I guess you could say a formal definition. Pisco's using the formal definition of indefinite, and these two seem to either be, I think Zetsu finally caught on to it, but Lactoid here is just too fucking stupid to understand it.
And now you're using it to defend your stupid position.
Do you think my position? Wait, do you think my position is? Do you think my position was the word definite or indefinite wasn't used, or was I talking about the substance, whether or not it was an indefinite or definite pause? Don't be a idiot.
Answer your question directly.
Then it's not indefinite.
It's not indefinite.
It's not indefinite unless they use the term indefinite. That's your position.
Well, in this case, yes. In this
that's your
case,
position. Yes. Okay, got it.
Yes.
Is it possible to say something is indefinite with using out word? If I say until I decide otherwise,
you are
really indefinite means forever.
What is this semantic ass argument?
Technically means it doesn't specify directly.
I'm not the one making this semantic ass.
You're literally defending yourself by saying
I'm not.
Thing you didn't know.
We're gonna reset.
Maybe he's not an idiot. Maybe it's just a little bit of intellectual dishonesty. To give Lactoid the benefit of the doubt here, I think there's a version of what he's saying where I could see but no, they're confined by law to not impound the funds for for longer than the second to last day or whatever he said earlier of the fiscal year. So they could withhold it up to 364 days. But the Impoundment Act outlines 45 days, a 45-day limit. So it's okay, so then you go into some of these more obscure cases that they talk about here. So I think they're finally about to get into impoundment. We'll go look at the documentation here in a moment.
We're gonna reset. Okay, so apparently the spending.
It sounds like, I guess, sorry, to summarize again, I think if we give Lactoid the benefit of the doubt, what he's saying is that whether or not this is a constitutional crisis has yet to remain seen, because they haven't, the amount of days that they've hit hasn't crossed whatever the legal threshold is. But again, I think the more legal wiggle room that the Trump administration gives themselves, the better their odds are of succeeding in court. And I think that's why Pisco's describing this as, it's maybe what Pisco should be saying here is that it's not maybe currently actively a constitutional crisis, but a constitutional crisis is imminent. Like, it's going to happen. And because they didn't put they didn't define how long these funds would be impounded for, that is crossing a line that shouldn't be crossed, that they should just follow the law and give a defined time frame in which these funds are frozen.
Freeze. And to be clear to my audience, what we're talking about now, we're talking about the spending freeze on U.S. aid, correct? Is that
correct? On federal,
Yes.
on federal financial assistance,
So they're talking specifically USAID. Got it.
as defined in the 2-page memo, and then the policy continues. The memo has been rescinded. That's a way of they're trying
Does
to
he have the
judicial
right to
review.
freeze it, Pisco?
Not indefinitely. You just said it, right? You agreed with me.
Wait,
not
but
indefinitely.
does he have the right to freeze it? Yes or no?
No.
He also
no. He
doesn't
has to
have the
comply.
Yes or no? Does he have the right to
no.
freeze
The
it?
answer is
He does
no.
not have the right to freeze
The answer
it.
is
He does not have the right to freeze it.
The answer
It is
is
already
the answer
approved
is
by
no.
Congress.
He needs to follow the procedure set out by Congress in many different statutes, including the Impoundment Act and other statutes. He has to follow the law. Okay.
Impoundment Act
I don't
isn't
think that we have a
law.
king like you do who can just ignore Congress's
he has
core
the right
legislative authority.
So you're wrong. He has the right to freeze the funds under the Impoundment Act.
He didn't follow the
That's
procedures of the
not-
Impoundment Act.
that's
He didn't do what the Impoundment Act
is a good
demands.
law.
Okay, all right. So here we go.
Go
here
ahead,
we go.
Zetsui.
Yeah, bail me out.
New
Bail
Haven.
me out.
Wait. Do you think Chatham and New Haven aren't good law?
Wait. Sorry. You just said the Impoundment Act is not constitutional. Is that
Yes.
what you just said?
And
you think that the Supreme Court
deferral's been gutted by Chatham and New Haven.
But you agree that there are procedures by which the president, in order to institute a wide scale or even just a short-term pause on funding,
Yes.
he needs to go through, and that he did not go through those processes. Oh, you think
No,
he did?
those have been gutted. Chatham and New Haven.
So it is your
Okay,
position.
You know those cases.
just
I know
for
you
my
know those
audience,
cases, dude.
Hold on,
Wait,
just for my
let
audience,
Zetsui dig the fucking nails in.
edification, since
The
I am
nails
not
in?
familiar with Chad Hall or New Haven.
No, there's no nails.
I'm going to give it to
Come on.
Zetsui for a minute. Zetsui, can you explain what those rulings did and why it's
Sure.
applicable to the discussion we're having
So
right now?
Okay.
the impound.
I want to pay very close attention to what Zetsua, I think is what he said. I want to pay very close attention to his claims here, because again, I finally looked up the cases of Chadhaw and New Haven, Chadhaw, New Haven, like he's talking about. So we have the court documents behind what he's talking about here. So he's claiming, and I'm going to let him define it a bit here, but Zetsua is Zetsue, whatever, is claiming that the Impoundment Act of 1974 was gutted by Chadhaw and New Haven, to where it's not as strongly defined as what Pisco laid out. So let's see what he has to say.
Impoundment Act was made that allowed for deferrals of like 45 days. Oh no, sorry, that was rescinded. Deferrals, and allowed them to basically defer funds, and either house of Congress could veto it. Chadhaw made it so that basically you can't have one house vetoes. They ruled that as unconstitutional. In New Haven, they then said the entire deferral thing had to fall because the link between deferring and the House's ability to get rid of it was inextricably linked.
Are you talking about legislative vetoes?
A new rule.
Okay. So again, I think Pisco is asking the right question here, because Zetsue here just seemed okay. So he laid out that Chadhaw to basically defined and what rather hard, like had a harder definition of, what did he say? The one vote veto, the one vote legislative veto, which means either house of Congress. When you read the term House of Congress, it's referring to either the Senate or the House, I believe. And we can confirm that to make sure, but that to me is saying that they basically said that no, the president's ability to impound can't simply be vetoed by one house of Congress with like I say a simple majority. Obviously, if that were standing, then what would be happening right now is if hypothetically, let's say the Democrats controlled the House and we had Speaker Hakeem Jeffries, they would be voting to veto the impoundment without question. Right, that's 100% what the Democrats would be doing right now, assuming that Chadaha is still standing. So let's go into this a little bit. Let's go into this. I haven't read these types of things super in depth. So this is the Impoundment Act of 1974. I actually found the PDF of what looks to be the original stationary typed Impoundment Act. So we can pretty easily find there are so let's go through some definitions. How about that? There are two types of impoundments: rescissions and deferrals. Deferrals are temporary withholdings of funds, while rescissions are requests to the Congress to cancel budget authority. So we know that what we're talking about is a deferral, in the Trump administration. We're not talking about a rescission, because a rescission is requesting Congress to do something. Either house of Congress can reject a deferral by passage of a simple resolution. So a deferral, which is unilaterally determined by the president and does not require a request to Congress, in this states that either house of Congress can reject the deferral by passage of a simple resolution. So again, that would be a congressperson proposing a resolution, it passing by a simple majority, and then boom, the funds are demanded to be released right then and there. Such an impoundment resolution requires the executive to terminate the impoundment and to make the deferred funds available for obligation immediately. Requests to rescind the budget authority involve the entire legislative process, since a bill or joint resolution passed by both houses and signed by the president is necessary to accomplish a rescission. Under the act, if a rescission bill is not passed within 45 days of continuous congressional session after the day on which the request is first received by the Congress, the funds made withheld during the pendency of the request must be made available for obligation. Comptroller. Okay. So we have a little more here that are maybe like other portions of the definition. So let's go find the verbiage. I've had to do some Control F here. So let's go look for I swore earlier there's obviously a 45 in this document. Why is Chrome such a piece of shit? You're telling me Google, with all their AI powers and shit, can't read something that was done on stationery? What the fuck? This is insane. So the only 45-day verbiage I found, okay, maybe it's in here. Okay, here we go. Maybe it was in the opening paragraph. I forgot about that. Okay, the Impoundment Control Act of 1974 requires the president to report promptly to the Congress all withholdings of budget authority and to abide by the outcome of the congressional impoundment review process. The act has generally worked well, but possible refinements in the law and its administration were recommended. The Office of Management and Budget, so OMB rather, should specify the duration of proposed partial year deferrals. Identify impoundments of congressional add-ons to executive branch budget requests. Note whether previous impoundments have been proposed for each program, and improve the timeliness of presidential impoundment reports. Legislative recommendations include repeal of the requirement to report routine impoundments and provision for a means to reduce the 45-day period during which can be withheld pending rescission requests. The act should be amended to require a statement of the exact duration of proposed partial year deferrals. Eliminate the 25-day waiting period before the Comptroller General. Okay, so it sounds like, yeah, originally like 45 days for rescissions, but this is a deferral. So let's see what we can find on that, shall we? So this is, what's this document here? Is this New Haven? Item veto and expanded impoundment proposals. So this, I think, okay, let me see. This I think was what led me down the rabbit hole of finding New Haven and Chadaha. I think I vaguely, I think I pretty well understand Chad Haas, so let's actually go into that. Okay, I had to control F on this one as well. Impoundment. Okay, there we go. Okay, so let's start here. The legislative veto balanced delegations of statutory authority in new areas of governmental involvement: the space program, international agreements on nuclear energy, tariff arrangements, and adjustments of federal pay rates. During the 1970s, the legislative veto was important in resolving a series of major constitutional disputes between the president, this would be Nixon, everybody, the last fucking dipshit criminal Republican that was in office before, or I guess the first big one. He was the first dipshit Republican criminal president before Reagan and then before Trump. During the 70s, the legislative veto was important in resolving a series of major constitutional disputes between the president and Congress over claims of the president to broad impoundment, war, and national emergency powers. The key provision of the War Powers Resolution authorizes the termination by concurrent resolution of the use of armed forces in hostilities. A similar measure resolved by the problem posed by presidential claims of inherent power to impound appropriations. Congressional Budget and Impoundment Control Act of 1974 in conference, a compromise was achieved under which permanent impoundments termed rescissions would require approval through enactment of legislation. In contrast, temporary impoundments or deferrals would become effective unless disapproved by one house. This compromise provided the president with flexibility while preserving ultimate congressional control over the budget. Although the War Powers Resolution was enacted over President Nixon's veto, the Impoundment Control Act was enacted with the president's approval. These statutes were followed by, so Congress overcame the veto? Wow, that's crazy. These statutes were followed by others resolving similar problems. The National Emergencies Act, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So I don't think, okay. So this just sort of, I guess, gave us a quick summary of the Impoundment Act in a way. But what I think it relates to is the INS versus Chadha. What this had a ruling over one House legislative vetoes. So again, one House legislative veto just refers to the House or the Senate vetoing any sort of presidential action, any sort of executive power, I suppose. One House legislative vetoes are invalid because they should be considered an exercise of legislative power, which makes them subject to the wow, what is this word? Okay. How do you say it?
Bicameralism. Bicameralism.
Bicameralism. Interesting. I don't know that I've ever heard that word. Which makes them subject to the bicameralism and presentment requirements in Article 1 of the Constitution. Facts. A federal statute allowed either the House or the Senate to invalidate a decision by the AG to allow a certain deportable alien to remain in the U.S. The Attorney General had decided to allow Chadha and other non-citizens to remain in the U.S., but this one House veto mechanism reversed that decision. So, okay, so the AG in the 70s, whoever this was, they had decided to allow Chadha to remain in the United States. But the House at the time said no. We want this person deported, or this person or these people deported. The non-citizens argued that the federal statute was unconstitutional and that Chadha sought review of his deportation order. The Immigration and Naturalization Service agreed with him that the law was unconstitutional, as did the appellate court. Okay, so at least in... Oh, was this the Supreme Court that decided this? That makes sense, because Thurgood Marshall, he was a justice on the Supreme Court, right? 1983. Thurgood Marshall SCOTUS. He was on the Supreme Court from 1967 till 1991. So yes, this was a Supreme Court decision. I don't know that it said that before, but yeah, interesting. So okay, so it was unconstitutional in this application. I don't know that application exists in the current situation with Trump. We're not talking about a person who, because I think there was a little more to this. What did I read earlier? Okay. To allow a deportable alien to remain in the United States. Appellee respondent Chad Haw, an alien who had been lawfully admitted to the United States on a non-immigrant student visa, remained in the United States after his visa had expired and was ordered by INS to show cause why he should not be deported. He then applied for suspension of the deportation, and after a hearing, an immigration judge, acting in accordance with the law, whatever this statute is, the immigration judge, it sounds like put it on the attorney general to be like, hey, should this person be deported or not? In his discretion to suspend deportation, ordered the suspension and reported the suspension to Congress as required. Thereafter, the House of Representatives passed a resolution pursuant to a different statute here, vetoing the suspension, and the immigration judge reopened the deportation proceedings. Chad Haw moved to terminate the proceedings on the ground that this statute vetoing a suspension. So again, vetoing a suspension of deportation was unconstitutional. Not that the one vote veto was unconstitutional. So, okay, so Chad Haw is not proving what Zetsue is alleging that it does. I think I can make that determination now. Shall we agree? Yeah, I think we agree. Fuck. Okay, I think we agree on that. Okay, so here's New Haven, which references Chad Haw again. Okay, I think I had us at the right spot here. So let's go. Okay, I'm gonna copy Chad Haw. So that's what we're gonna have to search for later. And it was, okay, got it. Okay, City of New Haven, Connecticut versus United States. Summary. Holding that the challenged portion of Section 1013 of the Impoundment Control Act of 1974 is so bound up in the whole scheme of Section 1013 that the rest of the section cannot stand independently. Okay, maybe I should get the impoundment thing pulled back up. Is there a Section 1013 in here? Hello? Oh. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have some Googling to do. Okay. Section 1013 impoundment allows the president to temporarily delay or defer certain federal funds during a fiscal year. Okay. The deferral can only be done under specific conditions, and the president must notify Congress in writing. So this is the AI overview. Take it with a grain of salt, because we know Google will mislead us these days. How does Section 1013 work? The president can defer funds if certain conditions are met. The president must notify Congress in writing of the deferral. If Congress disapproves the deferral. Okay, this is the original wording of the Impoundment Act. Okay, so it sounds to me like Section 1013 is just referring to the deferrals. So New Haven essentially seems to make the claim that presidential deferrals just doesn't. Okay, let's keep reading, because I don't know. I feel like this is almost if what I'm hearing, if what I'm understanding in this is correct, that what Zetsu is talking about is even more of a misunderstanding than Chadha. Oh my god. Okay. This is a circuit judge. In this case, we are called upon to decide the extent of the president's statutory authority to defer the expenditure of funds appropriated by Congress. Under Section 1013 of the Impoundment Control Act, the president must indicate his intention to defer a congressional appropriation by sending a special message to Congress. So maybe it wasn't very well defined in the Impoundment Act to Congress. In that message, the president is required to justify the deferral and specify its amount, its intended length, and its probable fiscal consequences. Under the act, if either house of Congress passes an impoundment resolution disapproving the proposed deferral, the president is required to make the funds available for obligation. If neither house acts, the deferral takes effect automatically, although it may not last beyond the end of the fiscal year. Okay, so there's the terminology on the fiscal year. So at least there's some accuracy there in what they're saying and what Zetsu is saying, and Lactoid by proxy. While the statute, by its terms, only permits the president to propose the deferral of funds, the effect of the statute is to permit the president to implement a deferral of up to 1 year until such time as Congress acts to disapprove the deferral. Okay, let me read that again. While the statute, by its terms, only permits the president to propose the deferral of funds, the effect of the statute is to permit the president to implement a deferral of up to 1 year until such time as Congress acts to disapprove the deferral. Okay. The majority of proposed deferrals are routine programmatic deferrals, by which the executive branch attempts to meet the inevitable contingencies that arise in administrating congressionally funded agencies and programs. Occasionally, however, the president will seek to implement policy deferrals, which are intended to advance the broader fiscal policy objectives of the administration. So this, to me, describes exactly what Trump is doing. The president will seek to implement policy-based deferrals, which are intended to advance the broader fiscal policy objectives of the administration. The critical distinction between programmatic and policy deferrals is that the former are originally intended to advance congressional budgetary policies, whereas the latter will typically negate the will of Congress by substituting the fiscal policies of the executive branch for those established by the enactment of budget legislation. As a hypothetical example, one might consider a congressional appropriation of $10 million. Wow, when was this written? To construct a new highway between Washington, D.C. and New York. If inclement weather threatened completion of the construction project, the president might seek to defer expenditure of the appropriated funds for programmatic reasons, like weather. They can't get it done in time, so we have to impound these funds until the weather clears up and we can do it, get back to work. That makes perfect sense. However, if the president believed that the project was inflationary, he might attempt to delay the expenditure by the funds for policy reasons. Oh, interesting. In the instant case, the president invokes Section 1013 as authority for implementing 4 separate policy deferrals. Okay, we're already back down to the... We're already where we were talking about Chad Haas, so it's probably good that I just started reading it. Okay. In particular, the president deferred the expenditure of funds earmarked for 4 housing assistance programs to be administered by the Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD. The appellees, various cities, mayors, community groups, members of Congress, associations of mayors and municipalities, and disappointed, expectant recipients of benefits under the 4 programs, brought these consolidated actions challenging the authority of the president to implement policy deferrals pursuant to Section 1013. That challenge was based on the inclusion in the statute of a legislative veto provision of the type held unconstitutional by the Supreme Court in Chadha. Okay. So consolidated actions challenging this is, I knew this was going to be, I got to reread this to sort of really wrap my head around it, people. So give me a second here. Bear with me. Okay. So all these people brought these consolidated actions challenging the authority of the president to implement policy deferrals pursuant to Section 1013. That challenge was based on the inclusion in the statute of a legislative veto provision of the type held unconstitutional by the Supreme Court in Immigration and Naturalization versus Chadha. Okay, so that sounds to me like these people were essentially suggesting a legislative veto and they were suggesting the type of legislative veto that was deemed unconstitutional in Chadha. So I think I understand what Zetsu is saying. According to the appellees, the unconstitutional legislative veto provision contained in Section 1013 rendered the entire section invalid, leaving the president without statutory authority on which to base the deferrals in question. The appellees requested a declaratory judgment that Section 1013 was void in its entirety, and an injunction obligating the nominal defendants, the U.S., the Secretary of HUD, and the director of OMB, to release the funds appropriated by Congress for the 4 HUD programs. As will be seen shortly, the president need not rely on Section 1013 as authority for making routine programmatic deferrals without proper congressional approval. Although the president must report programmatic deferrals to Congress under the procedures outlined in Section 1013, the president has separate statutory authority under the Anti-Deficiency Act to implement such deferrals. Thus, while the appellees seek to void Section 1013 in its entirety, they in effect challenge only the authority of the president to implement policy deferrals without prior congressional approval. After carefully analyzing the intent of Congress in enacting Section 1013, the district court held that the section's unconstitutional legislative veto provision was inseverable from the remainder of the section. City of New Haven versus U.S. Okay. Accordingly, it declared Section 1013 void in its entirety and ordered the defendants' appellants to make the deferred funds available for obligation. Shortly thereafter, however, the president signed into law legislation overturning the challenged deferrals. Pursuant to this legislation, the funds deferred by the president have been made available for obligation. For much of the same reasons offered by the district court in its thorough and able opinion, we hold that the unconstitutional legislative veto provision in Section 1013 is inseverable from the remainder of that section. We therefore affirm the district court's declaratory judgment striking down Section 1013 in its entirety. We hold, however, that the request for injunctive relief is now moot. Wow, okay. So this court determined that Section 1013, so let me just pull that up again. Impoundment Section 1013. Okay. So it sounds like that they can't impound under the justification of policy. They're still supposed to send written, which it sounds like that they're, you know, what they're saying is that it sounds like there was a written memo to Congress, right? They did notify Congress in writing, basically, it sounds like, specifying the amount of budget authority being deferred, the reasons for the deferral, and the estimated fiscal impact. So maybe they did all that. I don't know. Let's just grant them that they did all that. We'll assume they did. Congress can review the deferral and decide whether to take action. Deferrals only for the fiscal year. So I don't think that in addition, okay, let's see. Maybe the house.gov link here has a better, just, I don't know. I need kind of like a layman definition of this, I feel like. Okay. So this is from the Democrats, so keep that in mind. Okay, let's see. So this is U.S. foreign. Let's see, where's... Okay. any action or inaction that precludes federal funds from being obligated or spent either temporarily or permanently. It is important to note that there are legally available processes in place for the president to propose to Congress their desire to permanently cancel funding for Congress's consideration, including through the annual president's budget request and the special procedures under Section 1012 of the Impoundment Control Act. In addition, the special procedures in Section 1013 of the Impoundment Control Act also allow for the temporary delay known as a deferral of certain funding during a fiscal year if one of three narrow conditions is met and the president transmits a special message notifying Congress of such a deferral. However, given the limited purposes for which deferrals are allowed under these Impoundment Control Act procedures, no president has pursued the deferral procedures under the ICA since President Clinton. Nevertheless, at least 3 day one executive orders call for unilateral action to delay the obligation or procedure of enacted appropriations. So, okay. I think this is kind of the definition I was looking for. Yes, I know it's from the Democrats, but like there's nothing that was just said there that is false from what we were just reading in the court documents themselves. So let's be clear. These two, Zetsue and Lactoid, they are trying to say that President Trump has implemented impoundment here correctly. And Pisco's saying that obviously he hasn't. Impoundment sounds like it's not used very often because it's got a very narrow legal scope of which you can use it. Clinton apparently used it in the 90s, but it sounds to me like that was not court challenged. Actually, you know what? Let's see Clinton impoundment 1990, I guess. I don't know. Bill Clinton impoundment. Fuck off, Googs. Okay. Wow, what the fuck? Okay, Wikipedia might help us out here. Clinton. Okay. However, the procedure set up by the act was cumbersome. Most recent presidents supported the restoration of the impoundment power, including Presidents Reagan, Bush, Clinton, okay, blah, blah, blah. Politicians such as McCain, Kerry, Gore, these people supported restoration of the power. The Line Item Veto Act of 1996 is what Clinton used. So he impounded funds, but it was under a different like law or statute. Was a federal law the U.S. granted to president power to line item veto budget bills passed by Congress. It was signed into law in 1996, but its effect was brief and ruled unconstitutional by the Supreme Court just over 2 years later. Well, there you fucking go. So that's why Clinton was the last president to use impoundment, is because it's a fucking pain in the ass to use. It's almost never going to be without legal challenge, and it sounds like justifiably so. So these two dipshits, I'm sorry, it took us all that time, everybody, but like for real, I wanted to get into this because I really wanted to know, does the president have some sort of legal authority? Does the president have a legal authority to impound funds? And I think that what we are, yes, he does, but it's in terms of using it legally, it sounds like it's very difficult to use legally from what we were reading. And again, based on the definition, Trump hasn't used it legally. He hasn't used it correctly based on what the Impoundment Act lays out. So these guys are making very disingenuous arguments. Let's keep listening here.
Cool.
Are you talking about?
I'm talking about that is part. I mean, that's a way of describing it. Basically, is the way legislature's ability to do it.
This is not a legislative veto. It's not on point.
No, it was New Haven. I know that's why people disagree with it, but New Haven shot it down. Have you read New Haven?
I've not read the case that you're referring to called New Haven. I don't know. I don't know what that case is. No, I know what I know the case law on legislative vetoes. This is not. We're not talking about legislative vetoes.
It's on point.
Legislative
This was
veto.
about this exact. It was about the Impoundment Act. New Haven was about the Impoundment Act. Reagan had tried to defer funds, and they said I could do it under this section, and the court said no, you can't, because it fell due to Chadha.
So you're saying that Reagan was not? You're saying that Reagan? You're saying that Reagan? I don't know this chronology. I'm just being upfront with you. You're saying that Reagan was not allowed to impound funds. Was the ultimate decision by the court?
No, the ruling was that
was that the ultimate decision that he could not
let
impound
him
funds?
explain.
Let him explain.
So again, I think what we had just found out is that New Haven upheld what was discovered in Chadha. So I think Zetsue has an understanding of that. But it was the legislative veto part of Section 1013 that they laid out. And they said that means Section 1013 should be removed completely, which is crazy. So I don't know what the fuck Zetsue is talking about here. Because if what he says is true, then I think it's because Section 1013 should have been thrown out entirely.
They had it fall because they said it was the part that had already fallen was the ability for the legislative veto, for the ability for one house to say, no, you can't defer funds. Chadha removed that. Then in New Haven, he goes, because that fell, it collapsed the whole thing, that Congress would have never given them the power to defer if they weren't allowed to do the one house denial.
The whole thing fell. So it is your position. Wait, I just want to be clear. It's your position that Congressional Budget Impoundment Control Act of 1974 is not good law. It's not enforced.
No, I did not say that.
The section, right? Okay.
So is it enforced or not?
Has been updated.
Okay, is it enforced?
Not in that act. It has been overruled by it's been amended.
Okay, are there any procedures that the congressional statutes enforce today you would acknowledge under the moniker the Impoundment Act that the president is purportedly supposed to follow? Yes, right?
There are no time limits on it. It's because of the way it was gutted. It's so vague now.
Okay, so is it your position that the president?
You want the language?
Wait. Is it your position? Is it your position? Because Lactoid just told you that he thinks that an indefinite pausing of funding that Congress has passed. I'm assuming Lactoid under
infinite,
Article 1. No. It doesn't mean infinite. It means indefinite.
I'm saying he meant that.
You meant infinite.
What I'm saying, just to make my position clear, because you just really want to misrepresent this. I mean that I don't believe that the president has to specify a timeline about when the freezing ends, as long as the president is following.
Then you don't know the law. We just looked at it.
Any restrictions on when the freezing has to be up, or when
so now let's follow that line. You're saying the president does not have to follow any specific timeline. Is that fair? That's your position, right? Constitutionally?
No. That's not what I said.
Where does it say a timeline? Those are the two I just posted in the group.
They don't have.
Let Lactoid clarify.
He doesn't have to specify a timeline as long as he follows any timeline required of him by Congress or the Constitution.
Okay, so
would you agree with that? Wait.
No, I do not. No, I don't. No,
you think the president has to specify?
Hold on.
No, I do not agree with that.
Hold on. Stop. Pisco. Why don't you agree with that? Go ahead.
I do not agree that the president, who has not the core legislative authority to appropriate funds, has inherent authority to pause for any significant amount of time constitutionally. We're all gonna have disagreements on what that means, just like we are gonna have disagreements on what it means for like the First Amendment to whether or not something's defamation, whether or not there's an imminence for purposes of a different statutes. So there's no clear boundaries the Constitution imposes such that I can give you that kind of answer. But we know what we mean here, that the president cannot just usurp in a cute way Congress's ability to pass appropriations and to pause, as Lactoid is suggesting, this is what I mean to say is, without a specific time period established. He says that would be allowed constitutionally. That Lactoid is saying that the president, if he wanted to, that can't be right. Wait. Let me please finish this.
Let me give a hypo
Let me please finish this. What Lactoid is trying to tell you is that it's conceivable that it would be constitutional without a congressional statute telling this or suggesting this for the president to be able to pause all congressional appropriations forever, apparently. So, or not on a set schedule. Not on a set.
Back and forth.
Sorry. Not on a scheduled timetable. That cannot be correct. That cannot be right.
And
Okay.
Can I ask
Can I
Lactoid a
ask
question?
order we're gonna go?
But
I'm
let
gonna be
him
strict
elucidate
with the
so
order
he's
because
interrupting
you guys
the
are all
quiet
doing this.
here.
Here's what we're gonna do. Lactoid, you're gonna be able to respond to that, and then we're gonna give it to Soy Pill to ask his question to Lactoid.
If I
That's
think
the
my
order we're
question
gonna
might
go.
actually let Lactoid answer better.
Wait, no,
Very
this is
short if I can go
specifically to
first.
something Pisco, okay? So,
Yeah, we
Pisco, please. So you're telling me that if the president puts forward like an indefinite freeze, but then lifts it the next day, this would be a constitutional crisis because he didn't specify that he was going to be lifting it the next day? Is that your point?
No, that's not my point, because as you remembered, because you wrote down my definition of constitutional crisis, there's a portion there that says a significant and existential threat. And so I think that this threat is significant and existential.
How many days has it been?
Not every indefinite. It's not about the number of days that there has been. It's about the purpose and motives of these people. They're motivated by Project 2025, which you still deny. You still think they have nothing to do with Project 2025.
Okay, I get that none of this is in the Impoundment Act. None of this is going to be in Chathar, New Haven, obviously. And I think that's what Lactoid's biggest issue is here. But think about this. Pisco's right in that if you're debating these things, if you're discussing these things, you have to take the motives and the desires of the parties in question into account, right? And yes, Project 2025 wants to gut and remove multiple agencies. Elon has parroted that he wants to do this, right? That's when they start impounding funds, it's very easy to link that, oh, they might be impounding the funds in an effort to cater to the what's laid out in Project 2025, or what Musk and Doge want to do, which is getting rid of the Department of Education or USAID. They want to just get rid of these agencies. And then when the president starts impounding funds, it's like, why is he doing that? What could he be doing that for this reason? And it's obvious. So these guys are going to probably try to say, no, that doesn't mean that it's a constitutional crisis. But let's hear what they have to say.
No. Why are you saying, oh my God?
Because here's why.
Idiot. You're voting for this guy. You're trying to cope and say that it's
you
acceptable.
can throw all the ad homs you want. Okay?
Like you started your debate saying that, just like you started your debate, right? All the Pisco show, right?
Wait. You can throw all the ad homs you want. That's totally fine. Okay, have fun with that. What I'm saying is beforehand, you very confidently said, oh my God, if the president freezes funding without setting a definitive timetable, this is awful.
It's unconstitutional. It's unconstitutional.
Wait, it's a constitutional crisis. You're saying it's unconstitutional.
But that's not my definition for a constitutional crisis.
And so, whoa. And so, then if that's all so bad, etc., right? I'm saying, well, what if the president sets forward a freeze, doesn't specify when it ends, and then lists it the next day, or 2 days later, or 3 days later? How many days has the freeze been?
My question to Lactoid would be, okay, is that a president who's followed the law his entire time in office and even out of office? Has he been been found guilty of 34 felony counts? Has he been found sexually liable of rape? Has he been impeached twice? This is so disingenuous. These guys are acting right now like Trump is just any other president, like he's any other law-abiding president. That is so fucking dumb. I just can't believe that. I mean, I'm an illegal immigrant, but other than immigration, Trump still sounds off. I mean, Trump still sounds off. Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. Like, he's got a lot of there's a lot of his legislative agenda that's just not broadly popular, right? Like, is that what you mean by off? Sleep the duh? Thanks for coming by the way.
Yes. So I just want to be
answer that question. How many days?
I want to be So the spending freeze started last Monday. So it's been now 8 or 9 days or something approach in that range.
That's a
January.
crisis?
Stop. He's trying to conflate, and I can very clearly sort of lay this out for you. Something is unconstitutional. We said at the start, doesn't necessarily mean constitutional crisis. And he knows this. Right? So what we're talking about is something that gets to the underlying... 8
days is a crisis?
There we go, right?
Because Pisco doesn't like interruptions.
Right.
Yeah,
so he's afraid, and he knows that I am able to make these differences and distinctions known. And so just because I could say that it's unconstitutional for the president to indefinitely suspend the aid and to put a pause on it in any circumstance without congressional approval doesn't mean that every instance of that is a constitutional crisis. What we have here that is different, that raises the significance, that raises the intensity and the existential nature, which is in by definition, is one, it applied on a broad scale to all kinds of spending trillions and trillions of dollars. It applied as part of a clear effort under Project 2025 to bring the Congress to heel. The architects what was the office that instituted this freeze? The OMB. Who are they putting as the head of the OMB? Russell Vought. He talks about this. And this guy,
the Hitler.
The guy who said he's in a post-constitutional era, which he knows, and he's lying to you. So he's trying to
I certainly hope Doge is gonna fail, because it's I think it creates too many questions. It crosses too many boundaries, violates too much privacy, even if it doesn't technically violate the law, which I have yet to see proven in any capacity, that it doesn't in some way, shape, or form violate the law. You wouldn't have voted? Well, I think that's a silly. If whether you're a citizen or not, obviously, I think voting's important. I think there are a bunch of people in this last election who didn't vote, who, if they had, we would not be looking at this right now. Would you agree, Sleep? I mean, how many you have the right to vote? Well, I mean, but in 1855 they changed it. To U.S. citizens. Well, that's a long-standing law there, brother, if it's 1855.
Do this little shell game where it's the same thing that Republicans and MAGA people do all the time. You find a little thing, be like, okay, so if you just pause this one little loan to this one student and at one little time, so completely minimizing what's going on and narrowing the focus into what we're talking about here, which is a broad fucking spending freeze of legislative.
To tell you the truth, man, I'm kind of for that type of thing. I mean, citizenship might be something that you never get like the country to move on, but I think in general, I think that the citizenship process should be much simpler. I don't have a problem with requiring citizenship so much to vote as I do. I mean, I think residential status in the U.S. at the bare minimum, right? I think if you just have to you just have to live in the U.S. because obviously, like political, the policies of politicians are going to affect you. Haven't seen your folks in 22 years, man. I'm sorry to hear that, and I mean, I would love if we're never going to see a future in the United States, if we're never going to see where the requirement to citizenship is waived, if that's always going to be a requirement that you need to be a citizen, I think then make the process to become a citizen much simpler. I don't think you need all these insane requirements and rules and process to become a citizen. There are people it takes 18 to 20 years to become a citizen. It's just crazy.
Enacted appropriations of all fucking kinds. Your comparison is stupid.
Wait, and you agree. So your only contention is that he didn't put like a definite time end. If he put the end of the freeze, hold on. Wait. If he froze all the funding you're talking about, and let's say put an end date of like, I don't know, 3 weeks, would that be constitutional?
So it would, in my opinion, still be unconstitutional. I was going off so the reason why I'm focusing on indefinite is because you're now changing what the definition of indefinite is. You're changing what the definition of indefinite is. You said I don't know, and everyone saw you weasel around. So, but what happened is you said it would be, of course, unacceptable for the president to do an indefinite pause. That's what you said. So I'm like, oh, great, because I happen to know that it's an indefinite pause. And so now we're doing this little word game, and so that's why we're focusing here.
Answer my question
but to answer your question, no. If the president put a year-long pause of this con and defined it to end on
3 weeks, I said 3 weeks.
And okay, define it end in 3 weeks.
Yeah, but you think a year long is okay?
That sounds tough, Sleep. Man, I hope for the best, and I think that it's one of those where if you're here if you've been here for a long time, if you're working, if you're you've demonstrated that you're willing to contribute to American society, and you see something in living in the United States beyond yourself, like, man, I don't think you should have to go through all that to just become a citizen, but that's the world we live in, don't we?
So this entire debate is going to be a continuing.
Yes or no?
Wait. This entire debate.
1099, yeah, I'm with you. 1099's the sort of that's like a it's what are they? It's like a gig. It's like a gig tax form or something like that. Like you're like a gig worker if you get a 1099.
Debate is going to be a continuum fallacy where we have to say,
Wow.
we have to say, look at him. This entire debate is going to be a continuum fallacy, which you could apply to any constitutional principle where you could say, okay, I don't know.
Question.
But yeah. So to answer your question, I believe it is unconstitutional for the president to pause aid without congressional approval. You can always find a carve out. You can always find an exception that proves the rule, right? You know this. You know that if there was
For 3 weeks?
Yeah. So you understand, right? That you can always find an exception that can prove the rule. And constitutional law is like that. It's filled with these little gaps. And he is trying to take advantage of that and take advantage of the fact that the Constitution is a short document to say, oh, I guess I can't really say anything's constitutional unless you have the precise nanosecond in which it becomes unconstitutional. That's what he's trying to do here. Don't let him distract you. What's going on here is a broadband and
also
when I answered it, I said it's unconstitutional. I answered it, I said it's unconstitutional.
We gotta get.
Make him answer this question. No,
I answered it. I said it's unconstitutional.
Wait,
I answered it. I said it's unconstitutional. Did you hear me say it? I just said it again.
3 weeks. If he paused it
Unconstitutional.
for 3 weeks.
Yeah. So unconstitutional for 3 weeks.
And then I asked why.
Wait a second. Without congressional approval, or I think that there could be a carve out in certain imminent circumstances that the Supreme Court may recognize, and you're going to try to play in the joints here and say that that's so now we can have any kind of pause. That's not what we're talking about here. And the other absurdity on your end, which was brought out by the soy pill, was you would accept incredibly long time periods, wouldn't you? You would say a 2-year, right? So let's just put this to you because in fairness,
let's ask Lactoid directly.
In fairness to you, you should answer the question. Is a 2-year ban, a 2-year definite pause on all appropriations by the president unilaterally? Is that constitutional? Yes or no? No.
So no.
Why?
Okay, this is pretty much the point of the debate that I was wanting to get to, and I after especially us reading these court statutes, like these court decisions and whatnot, looking into this, it seems pretty apparent to me that I think that Lactoid here is it, and even Zetsue to an extent, they're trying to argue this from the perspective of, on paper, like strict using the strictest definition possible, like on paper, is this a constitutional crisis? And is what I mean, even peeling it back a little further, is what is the type of impoundment that the Trump administration and Doge are doing, is that considered unconstitutional or illegal in some capacity? I don't think these two made a great case for that either way. That it's not unconstitutional, that it is a constitutional authority, and that it is legal. I don't think either of them made that case very well. And what Pisco laid out, I think, was really good, which is that the intentionality is also very important, right? Is that if say, like, let's just use a Republican president who didn't break the law so badly, George W. Bush, right? If Bush had done a similar impoundment without there being a Project 2025, without there being on the record statements from some billionaire that he's employed to a special department or what have you, had all these other things been in place, sure, maybe then what you could constitute an attempt from Bush to impound is as illegal. Well, what they are doing isn't illegal, but it is changing the Constitution. Oh, are you talking about the 1099 thing still? But the people who should be able to vote if it'll be able to happen or not, like, look at Doge. Nobody voted for Elon. Yeah. I mean, Elon's unelected, so it's hard. It's hard to imagine. And I think, it sounds like there's an Obama era, something that was passed in the Obama era about special departments being formed by the executive branch. They're using that as the legal basis to justify the creation of Doge. But from what I read on those, it's not super strictly defined. And obviously other laws are going to. I mean, man, Obama was way better. What do you mean? You're sad to say that? Obama was absolutely better. We might not have gotten everything out of the Obama years that we really wanted, but he was absolutely better. He wasn't threatening to, he wasn't talking about taking over Palestine and annexing Canada. They weren't gutting, federal agencies left and right. He didn't allow some unelected bureaucratic oligarch into the Oval Office. There's so many ways in which Obama was better. Like that's not sad to say. I think that's obvious to say, Sleep. But yeah, I mean, I just don't think that that what these guys laid out was, saying that it's somehow that they're operating within their constitutional authority doesn't seem like they made the best case for it. I think when you factor in Pisco's statement on intent, I think that it becomes abundantly clear that we are maybe facing an imminent constitutional crisis in the United States.